Jonathan Toews, you're on Bust Watch. You can't just ride off into the sunset on the coattails of Patrick Kane forever. People are going to see through this whole charade of yours. Oh, you brought a pet? Oh, wait, you're letting it loose. Nope, that's not my kind of pet. Nope, goodbye. Welcome back to the Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Time to talk about the most requested player in quite a while for Bust Watch, and that's Jonathan Toews. Yep, lots of people asking about him, center for the Chicago Blackhawks, in case you did not know. He has been just kind of bad, just a little bit bad. And people are getting really frustrated with him, and I think that it's not unjustified. I think when you look at past performances before just last year, he wasn't super fantasy relevant. Maybe in a face-off wins league, sure, but outside of that, he's kind of been sort of good while he's hot, and then otherwise it's just frustrating owning him most of the time. And so the real question here, and one of the ones we've gotten the most, is should we expect last year's Jonathan Toews or the Toews from years prior? And what should we expect going forward? Is he droppable? Is he not? So let's tackle that by kind of, as usual, going through his deployment, what it's looking like, and what should we see for the future here out of Jonathan Toews. So let's start first with deployment for Jonathan Toews, and the obvious one is 5-on-5. He's playing with Patrick Kane still. Caggiula is on his left wing, so I'm not huge on that left wing spot for Caggiula. The big standout here is, of course, Alex DeBrincat on the fourth line, who is probably going to make his way onto Bust Watch here very soon, but Jonathan Toews is a little bit more pressing at the moment. And then Jonathan Toews is still on that top power play as well, centering it. So the deployment hasn't changed too much. He's still in that top line. I think the big difference, of course, is that lack of left wing talent. But again, I would argue that last year was the same thing. There wasn't much of a left wing talent for him last year either, because the line on that second was Strome and DeBrincat. So we didn't have DeBrincat on that top line. So let's take a look at Jonathan Toews' stats this year and see how they compare to last year and see what's going wrong here, right? So the one thing that stands out to me specifically is that his shots on goal pace is down a lot. So you see it down 31-ish%, and I think part of that just has to do with Chicago as a whole being worse. And because Chicago as a whole is being worse, he just doesn't have the stick on his puck as much, and so he can't shoot the puck as much. And we're seeing the same thing with Patrick Kane as well. He's also shooting less. So I think it's a systemic problem there, not necessarily a Jonathan Toews problem. Now, the good news there, both good and bad. Of course, if you shoot less, that just means less goals in general. But if you look at his shooting percentage, it's at 5% at the moment right here. And compared to last year's 14.83. Now, 14.83 feels high, but his career average is around 14.1%. So he was right around what his career average was. And right now he's down to 5%. So this shooting percentage should come up, should eventually. Now, when that will happen for Jonathan Toews, I don't know. But nonetheless, last year he got 35 goals on a 14%, almost 15% shooting, right? But if he shoots to 14% and is only shooting 164 shots, that's a lot less goals. So you're already looking at less goals. So then we take a look at assists. Now, he got a healthy amount of primary assists versus a secondary, and he got 46 assists total. Now, right now, one of the things that's, I guess, alarming, but will definitely turn around is his IPP. His IPP is currently at only 25%. Versus last year's 65%. I would expect him more likely to be in that 60 to 65% range than stay down in this, 25 or even like a 50%. So that will also come up. He's under indexed on the amount of points he's involved in. And the on-ice shooting percentage is also ridiculously low at 7.69%. So I think right now, Jonathan Toews is largely not benefiting from any luck. And not only not benefiting from luck, he is wildly unlucky at the moment. And part of that, of course, also has to do with, like I said prior, is the Chicago Blackhawks in general aren't playing very well. And because of that, it's not helping him out. Now, another thing to look at from last year is that he shot quite a bit on the power play last year. So he took a lot of power play shots, and he shot at 20% on the power play. So I would like to see these shots on goal on the power play come up a little bit, but it's not crazy alarming. Last year, he got a shot on the power play just a little bit over every other game. He got a shot on the power play. Right now, he's just a tad under that. So I'd like him to shoot a little bit more on the power play. But again, that's another thing that he's at 0%, and he got 20% last year. So that's another area where he can come up. Actually got, and power play assists were all right. So I'm not going to expect too much on the power play. Now, one thing on power play assists to remember there is Eric Gustafsson was unreal last year, and he's not exactly looking like his old self, and that has a lot of impacts on the actual efficiency of the power play. So I would expect in general his shots to come down and his actual assists to come down if they can't figure out that power play, which looks atrocious. And so just right there, you're looking at some points, I think, decrease from Jonathan Toews. I think at even strength, he should be fine over time. The shots on goal pace is the one thing that I'd say you got to keep an eye on, because if that continues to be low, then there's not much you can do there for him. There's not much you can do for a guy who doesn't shoot. You can't just like find goals somewhere unless his shooting percentage just goes wildly out of whack, which it's not necessarily or not usually the case for a guy like Jonathan Toews. To me, Jonathan Toews is last year was an 81-point player. Everyone thought, maybe he has that upside, but it feels like an anomaly to me at this point. It feels like an anomaly to me because of how Chicago played. Last year, they were far better with him on the ice than when he was off of it. They weren't as bad defensively as they are now. There's a lot of things kind of going wrong in Chicago, and Toews, I wouldn't say is necessarily the fault of that or the problem, but he's not benefiting from it. And so when you look at Jonathan Toews and all the stats, in my opinion, he is now more of a 65-point ceiling guy, maybe 70. I would not expect 80 like last year. I would expect more like a 65 to 70 guy, potentially. But really, you're looking at, if you want to look at it from a safe perspective and compare to what's on the wire, I would assume he's a 55 to 60-point guy, like he was in the years prior. I would assume 60, and then take a look at your wire and say, look, is that replaceable? I would say normally a 60-point center is replaceable for a streamer spot, normally, especially if you're in a 10-person league. Even in a 12-person league, if you don't count faceoff wins, for example, Toews isn't doing much for you. He needs to shoot more. If he's not shooting more, there's going to be better on the wire, most likely. And more often than not, from what I've seen, Jonathan Toews has been like the third center people have drafted, third, fourth center. And in that situation, I'd 100% rather have a streamer option than a center that you're probably going to be ending up benching all the time. For example, if Jonathan Toews is the guy you're choosing to bench all the time at the moment for somebody else, you should definitely be dropping him and picking up a streamer option and maximizing your starts. He was dropped in my keeper league, and he's still sitting on the wire. So if that gives you any indication, that's a 12-person keep 5 league. He's on the wire. Nobody's grabbed him. I don't plan on grabbing him unless he gets hot. He is right now to me a streamer option with 60-point upside. That to me is not super worth it as a lone center. And so it's on you to really figure out whether it's worth it or not. If he's your second or first center, yikes. If he's deeper than your first or second center, probably droppable in almost every format except 14 and greater, I'd say. If you're in a 14-team league or greater, probably not worth it, but things are not looking good for Jonathan Toews. And in my opinion, he is 100% on bust watch, and on top of that, probably drop and bust worthy at this point. So it's not good, it's not pretty, but it is what it is, and we've got to roll with the punches. So hope you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments, and let me know also who you think should feature on the next Bust Watch. Catch you next time.